Warning: the following program is designed for casual wrestling fans and is meant purely for entertainment. If you're SAWFT, proceed at your own risk. Viewer discretion is advised.
Brother, I'm going run a wild Hulk Hogan. If all I get's a moment, I'll make sure it's an explosion. Cause lately I've been seeing stars, trying to kick out on this joy cord. But it's no holds barred, middle fingers like I'm Stone Cold.
What is good, ladies and gentlemen? It is your boy, WETOODEEP, and we're doing another episode of the Slap and Mead Wrestling Podcast on this eventful week here on the channel. We had an episode Tuesday. I hope you checked out the live stream yesterday, and we're doing another episode tonight, and you'll get another normal rant video. We got a lot of rants coming on tomorrow night, or tomorrow at some point during the day. Y'all want to definitely check out tomorrow's episode, right? We got some rants planned that I think are going to be very good and very entertaining. But tonight, we're going to talk about NXT. We're going to talk about Evolve. We're going to break down essentially the lower levels of WWE's programming, right? NXT being my favorite of the three brands. I guess we could say four brands now with Evolve. And so we're going to talk about what I like about the shows. I was going to do like episode breakdowns. I don't think I want to do that though. As I thought about as I was watching it, I was like, I don't necessarily want to break down the episode. Y'all know me, like the live stream last night, it came off easy, right? But that was painful, right? Reading out and describing the matches and doing all that with AEW on the live stream last night. Yo, that was painful. That's just not the way I like to do reaction shows or review shows. I more so want to talk about this episode being I want to talk about Evolve, what I like about it, what I don't like about it. NXT, there's some things that I want to talk about with NXT as well. And then all of that, that's what this episode is for, right? We're going to get basically caught up with the universe. So here's the thing. Let's start with Evolve. Now, Evolve is one of those products, being on Tubi, being, on a free streaming network. I would say this. If you have anything else to do on a Wednesday night, don't try to stress about watching Evolve. I mean, they're 49-minute episodes. They're hour long with the ad breaks. So I wouldn't stress about watching Evolve. Like, it doesn't have to be one of those things you have to time your watch to every single night, or every single Wednesday night. I will say this here. Let's start with some of the positives on Evolve. What I like about Evolve is quite simply the team of Swipe Right, Brad Baylor, Ricky Smokes. We have Jackson Drake apparently getting involved in this, as well as Zeta Steele, and we'll talk about her a little bit more in the future of this episode. But that's my favorite part. Keanu Carver is great. Let's start, I guess, because I like most of the product, right? I like the production value. I like the simplicity of the crowd being invite only. That what that means is they're going to behave as a crowd, right? They're probably given specific directions on who to cheer, who to boo, right? And a lot of them are more informed wrestling fans. Some Some of them you've probably seen on an NXT screen before in the crowd. That's what I like about Evolve. It's not trying to be bigger than what it is. I like that they understand their role in the wrestling world. This is simply developmental to get some of these indie stars and other NXT names some recognition. Right, like, and it's necessary for a person like a Brinley Reese or even like a Riley Osborne, or right. I what I don't like is that Gallus is down there. Gallus should be main roster. They have no business being, they were NXT tag champions, NXT UK tag champions. Imagine Gallus on the main roster right now versus the War Raiders, right? That would be a banger match and a banger feud that would be very interesting to watch, right? Um, but right, some of the things I don't like about Evolve, though, I don't like the focus solely being on matches, right? Evolve to me feels like an AEW style show, right? It's 5 matches, uh, somewhere around there, like 4 or 5 matches. You'll get like a promo segment here and there with the interviewer. I think his name's Chewy. Um, right, but for the most part, there's the focus is the wrestling. They've done a decent job trying to weave some storyline together, but I don't think it's been enough to consider like Evolve like a storytelling entity, right? And if you guys know me, I watch wrestling and enjoy wrestling the best when there's a storyline being told, right? Some of it has a story, but for the most part, most of the Evolve matches are simply just matches. Um, and 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 so that is where I'm at now. We are doing some story, like there are several pieces weaving together as if they're trying to tell some sort of storyline. And again, I'm gracious with Evolve because we're 5 episodes into it. So, you have to get characters introduced, you have to you have to start the show and put on matches. um the Callie Armstrong story started episode 1, and we get to know her and who she is and her beef with Danny Palmer, and it's growing, right? There's that, the swipe right thing. That's probably like the biggest attraction Evolve has right now. What I wish they would have done was better at promoting on Evolve the tournaments that are starting next weekend in Vegas for the WWE ID tournament, right? Because these belts are going to be super important. And I believe if you're the champ, like I believe the WWE ID champion should be the Evolve belts. Now I'm assuming they're gonna come up with like an Evolve World Champion and a Tag Champion. I don't think there's enough talent on Evolve, to be honest with you, to have multiple style belt. Like I think you could keep it real simple. You probably could use a women's belt, a men's belt, and a tag team belt. Um, and keep it at that. But yeah, I think that's later down the line in a few months. They're still growing. Evolve is doing great in my opinion. I've never watched an episode and said, "Well, this sucks." Right? I may not have found every single episode the most entertaining product, but I've never finished the hour episode and said, "Well, that was a waste of an hour." Um, I thoroughly enjoyed it, right? So then we move on to NXT. And NXT, we are going to do a little bit brief of like a breakdown of the show, right? Just because there were, we're building towards something here with Stand and Deliver. So we start the night with Jordan Grace and Jada Parker Essentially, this match was, both of them want to be number one contender, and so 70 Vicares ringside, to study who could be her potential opponent. Let's just go ahead and talk about Jordynne Grace real quick. A lot of people said, she may not be it solely because she botched a tope. So here's my thing. I've never been a big fan of the argument of you can't criticize a wrestler if you've never stepped foot in the ring. I think Kylie Rae said something like that. Now, Kylie Rae's always sort of been a little bit more, and I don't mean this in a negative way, but like emotional. And so, but a lot of wrestlers say things like, if you've never stepped foot in the ring, you can't critique how we do moves. And they have a point, but at the time they don't. Like, because if we apply that logic to every single profession, then there would be a lot of people who complain at fast food workers who have never worked fast food before. And I've actually said, because as someone who has managed fast food restaurants before, that's not a job for the weak, right? Running, especially like in the kitchen, but being an employee at a restaurant is not for the weak. It is hard work. It's dirty work. You're, especially if you work the kitchen, you're especially if it's like if it is fast food, you're around grease, multiple hours of every day. I used to work 48 hours a week, if not more. I was around grease for 48 to 50 hours, sometimes 60 hours a week. Or you count the longest week I've ever had in my life, where I worked 96 hours in a week. Yeah, we're never going to do that again. Excuse me, but that's hard work, and I've always said, if you've never done it, don't complain about it when the fast food worker rings you up wrong, or the cashier rings you up right, but the cook messes up and reads it wrong, or just has an accident, or maybe a lot of people get mad at the kitchen for messing up an order, but sometimes it's rung up wrong, right? And so who knows what the problem is? That's not the point. If we're going to use this logic that some wrestlers, especially independent wrestlers, use of, well, if you've never been in the ring, you can't critique. Well, that doesn't fit across every industry, right? Because you're allowed to, here's my thing, you're allowed to critique someone's work, right? If I'm watching a hockey game, I've played some street hockey, but I've never played pro ice hockey before. But I think I know enough about the sport to say, hey, that's probably not the right play to run. Or, I've never played football at any level, much less the pro level. But, we sit there and we critique football all the time. I've played some basketball sometimes. I know what good basketball is, right? And so if I watch a basketball game and I see bad basketball, I've never played at a pro or college level, but I can still call that bad basketball, right? So but with that being said, I think we need to, pardon the pun, give Jordynne a little grace, because this is a move. I'm going to hold the same opinion I had when Top Dollar flopped over the top rope, right? We make fun of that all the time now. But at the time it happened, I said, bro, I've seen videos of this dude doing that. It was just one bad attempt where his knee gave out, right? And everyone was like, oh, but Jordynne doesn't have it. How do you botch this move? Don't do it if you can't. Guys, her leg quite literally hit the rope as she was going out of the ring, right? Now, I don't know if you know this. Those ropes are tight, right? They will stop you in your tracks if you hit them, right? They're not like the toy rings that are, stringy ropes, right? That things bounce off of and keep moving. No, they're ropes, right? And so they're gonna stop you if you hit them. And I don't know if y'all know the scientific law that an object in motion stays in motion until something stops it from being in motion. And when you hit that item, you'll stop full force, right? So Jordan Grace goes through the middle rope, her leg hits the rope, it's gonna cause her to not hit the intended target, right? I don't think it's early enough. One botch isn't enough to say, well, Jordan Grace is not it. She doesn't have it. Jordan Grace is a phenomenal opponent, a wrestler in this business. I don't necessarily think she has the look that appeals to me per se. Is like I don't think she'll ever be my favorite, and I'm not quite ready to call her like the next big thing in WWE. But I'm not ready to old yether her and put her out the pasture and over one botch, right? Anyway, this is the no contest because Stephanie Vaquer, they're sort of playing the Rhea Ripley card here when Rhea attacked Liv during the Elimination Chamber qualifier, Liv in the EO, and Liv hits Rhea, and Rhea strikes back and on accident or whatever the hell happened with that. It's sort of the same situation here. Julia comes back, which is big. I know a lot of people are mad, like, why would you take the belt off Julia just to give it to Stephanie? And this whole situation is a little bit washy. And this is washy, right? If Julia wasn't actually injured, I see no reason to take the belt off of her. And at the same time, squash, I wouldn't say squash, but strip Vaquer of the North American. But at the same time, I do, because I think Vaquer and Julia are obviously your best two women on the roster right now. But arguably your most over is Miss Parker. Jada Parker is the most over woman on NXT right now. Right? And which I'm happy for, right? Because y'all remember when they tried to cancel her for liking a tweet that didn't fit the political persuasion of the IWC, and they tried to cancel this woman, and it failed, right? Cancel culture failed on Jada Parker, and that's great. That's wonderful. I'm happy for that. But she's the most over woman on the NXT roster. And then I would say Stephanie, right? So I think you have to put the belt on Stephanie. I don't think people were 100% behind Julia, but I also think you needed a reason to turn Julia into a little bit more hardcore, not hardcore, but like heelish. She came in as like, here's this Japanese superstar. We're going to make her like uber friendly, the good girl, the baby face to get the belt off of Roxy. But then Roxy leaves that picture and you have Vaquer and Julia there, right? And so I think they've done the pretty decent. It's confusing. Sometimes it doesn't make a lot of sense what they're doing, but I think in the long term, I think they realized that the best way to run this is Stephanie Vaquer as this, right? Because here's what I think happens. Either Stephanie Vaquer retains the title and stays on NXT. Here's what I think happens. I'm just going to be honest with you. I think Jada Parker's winning the title at Stand and Deliver. And I know prediction episode is until Tuesday. But I think Jada Parker's going to win this fatal four-way. I think the other three are going to be caught up. Right? I do. I think we're going to see a huge part of this NXT roster that we've been accustomed to get drafted. I think Trick Williams gets drafted. I think Julia, Stephanie, I think Jordan Grace is going to get drafted. I think Roxanne Perez is going to get drafted. I think Fraxium's getting drafted. I think the Meta girls are getting drafted. I think we're clearing house here in NXT to make way for the newer names, the Zarias, the part of me feels Soruka could be caught up, right? I do. I feel like what we're gonna have at Stand and Deliver, they're both gonna be in the North American title picture match, right? I think they're gonna end up fighting each other, breaking up as a team. I think Zarya is the most likely choice to win that title, and then Soruka gets caught up post Mania. Right, but I think we might have a big clearinghouse sale of NXT talent pushed up to the main roster. I could see something like that, right? I think Trick Williams is gone. I think potentially an Eddie Thorpe could be gone. And so, right, we get this segment for the North America Championship between Ricky Starks, Shawn Spears, Ethan Page, Lexis King, and Wesley. I'll say this about Wesley. Dude was like on the high of the highs. This heel turn has now worked for him. He's now just a random NPC. It feels like in everything he's doing. He's lost all of what made him special, which was his aura. Because when you become a heel, like they've used him as a heel properly. When you become a heel, you have to stop doing the things that'll make the crowd cheer for you, which is the flippy stuff, right? So you have to be a little bit more grounded in your ring work, but that takes away everything that made Wesley special. He was never the best on the mic. He didn't, he's smaller. He didn't have the big presence in the ring. What made Wesley special was his heart, his ability to challenge on any given night to defend his title, the flippy stuff. And so when you take all of what made him special away from him, he's just another guy, right? Lexis King had a burn on somebody. I don't remember exactly who it was. No. It was Eddie Thorpe who had a burn on Lexis King, saying, just another greedy white dude who's not, content with what he has, talking about the Heritage Cup. This is going to be a fun feud, right? And everyone's like, why is, this is just Rampage. Well, that's the whole point. I think that's the whole point, right? You put the guys who are grouped together from AEW in this feud, and you throw in some other NXT guys in it. But that's the whole point, right? I'm sure this was something that they're laughing about in the back right now. Some other things that happened on Tuesday. Fraxium wrestled Swipe Right in a fantastic match. What a talent, right? Swipe Right is the future of the tag division. This was a good match. This was impressive by the newcomers. It's hard to believe that Swipe Right are in their early 20s. What a match this was. Swipe Right has big future written all over them, and that's on hundos. And I know a lot of people hate their promos and hate their gimmick, but I said it the first time I saw it. Right now, I'm gonna be honest. When they announced that Brad Baylor signed with NXT ID, I had zero idea who he was. I was judging solely on the picture they provided, and I was like, I'm not gonna like this dude. But I like this gimmick. I do. I said the first time I saw it, it's 100% fail proof as the heel gimmick. And so you just gotta be clever with how you use it on like an NXT, right? Their promo to create this match was either last week or the week before. where they were talking to Fraxium and Roxanne walks by and Brad Baylor goes to Ricky Smokes like, bro, there's a lot of talent here, right? And you can allude at what they're talking about, right? And it's fun and it's a good gimmick and it's easy to boo them, right? Because they're the frat guys, right? Everyone, if you're not a frat guy, you hate the frat guys, right? And so it's just a fun gimmick, but I think from a booking standpoint, it's really, really, really good. We get Jasmine Nix and Sol Ruka in a qualifier for the Women's North American ladder match at Stand and Deliver. Sol Ruka won the match. Jasmine Nix is a good talent. She's just in a place right now. And you always have this, like she's like third place in her faction, right? And I wish that they would. Part of me wishes that they would turn on her, right? Because if you look at Fatal Influence's whole gimmick, right, is we hate these sports girls coming in trying to take over the gimmick or take over the roster. But that's exactly what Jasmine Nix has always sort of felt off with this gimmick because that is her background. She was a sports girl, right? She played soccer in college. And so it's always felt weird her placement in this group. I'm sure you could go out and find some other woman who, go out and find like I'm trying to think of a woman wrestler who's not being used all that much, who's a little bit more attractive, who came up through the indie scene. I don't know if NXT has one. We'll take a look at the roster real quick. I'm trying to think of like a woman who you could replace her with that didn't come up here through that format of being a sports girl, right? I don't think they have anyone. I'm trying to find like well, personally, I feel like this could have been a group Roxanne ran with because that would make a lot of sense. I don't see a lot of. Yeah, I don't see a lot of. I mean, you could have put someone like a Thea Hale in the group instead of her, or you have this group get formed, eventually leading to her turn and her becoming a breakout star, and maybe that's still in the future of happening. But like Jasmine Nix is a good talent. I think she's decent. But it's just like it's hard for her to break out in a gimmick where, their whole Fatal Influences. Now they've sort of just become like we're the hot bad girls, which is where they probably should have started. Because it was kind of weird. I'm sure people can agree with me, having JC Jane, Fallon Henley being the girls that came up through the indie scene. And then you have Jasmine Nix, who is literally in the faction or as a part of the faction of a faction that hates that there are women coming up through NIL, which is exactly where Jasmine Nix came from. So, I mean, there could have been a story there, but anyway, we move forward. Hank and Tank versus Brooks Jensen, Nico Vance. Again, nothing super special, but I love Hank and Tank. Hank and Tank are one of my favorite tag teams. There's always something fun about these tag teams that are very non-serious, right? This has Otis type gimmick involved. Like I could see them coming up to the main roster and working something with Alpha Academy. That would be fun. Yeah, I don't know. I love Hank and Tank. They're a great tag team. and I hope eventually they win the tag titles. I think that would be fun. It doesn't have to be a long run, but have them like luck into a win to get a tag title match where they then luck into a win by mere circumstances and luck, and then maybe defend it 2 or 3 times where again they luck into winning, and then eventually their luck runs out. Again, right? You have Wesley versus Inamura. It wasn't anything special to me. So we got Ren Sinclair versus Izzy Dame, another qualifier match. I'm not the biggest fan of Izzy Dame winning this because I love Ren Sinclair more than Izzy Dame. I don't hate Izzy Dame. I'm fine with her winning, but I feel like Ren Sinclair should be in. Now, I think they were talking about maybe doing like a final opportunity type match, right? Now you have Dark State take on Trick Williams, Devon Evans, and Obafemi in the main event. So we gotta talk about Dark State here, right? Introducing all 4 of them at once. So I liked how the D'Angelo family sort of in their segment last week, it's Tony D'Angelo, like what's my intel on these guys, and that's how they introduce each member. I think that's creative and fun. However, with that being said, why are Dark State going after the main event scene? They should be going after the D'Angelo family. That would be a great introductory feud. I felt like Dark State was to create like confusion and suspense of, well, they can attack at any time. Well, it doesn't really make sense why they're attacking the main event scene, but it's also hard to care about all of them when you don't care about them as individuals because you introduce them as, all at the same time. I think it would have been fun to see Dion Lennox turn from the bookworm into this evil gimmick, and like week after week, and maybe this was happening in the back and I just haven't been paying attention, but like week after week, seeing him go down this path of becoming super dark and, tag teaming or creating this faction in the background. But again, I think they're in a weird position attacking the main event scene instead of continuing this thing with the D'Angelos, where I think it would be a better place for them. It just feels, it's a good idea. I just feel it could have been done a little bit better, maybe introducing one member of the group at a time so that we can care about them, right? Or learn to hate them. Even if if Dion Lennox started teaming with Osiris Griffin for a while, for like 2 or 3 weeks, and then, and we get to know them, and then Cutler James gets added, right? And then Shaquan Sugars gets added, right? I feel like that would have been a better use of how to introduce this tag team faction. And so it'd be interesting to see where they go, see what their role is in this main event scene, because I imagine they have a role in it. That's why they're there. So overall, these shows are fun and good, and they're not the greatest thing they're not the best thing on TV every single week. Like, I think Raw has really good episodes every now and then. I've always said NXT is my favorite because it's the most consistent. I can turn on NXT and get the same show every single week, which is what I like. I like consistency. I like knowing what I'm watching. I don't like having a very good episode of Raw one week and then the week after have the absolute worst thing I've ever seen in my life, right? I want a form of consistency. But let's talk about, I saw this going around on social media somewhere. And it is something that I have noticed and that I do have an opinion on. And that is that NXT made, if there's one thing I can, in hindsight over what we've seen over the last couple months that I can critique is that WWE towards the end of last year sacrificed Chase University as a faction for this push of Ridge Holland that has absolutely gone nowhere. It's a failed push at this point. And in response to that, Andre Chase is doing nothing important, and he's fantastic at what he does. You got Thea Hale, who hasn't been seen on TV since Ridge Holland was fighting Andre Chase. Riley Osborne's on Evolve now by himself, not even as a part of the group. Duke Hudson's now, probably the best member of the group, gets released because Triple H doesn't believe that there's a future with him on the roster, which is absolutely insane to me. Bro's 6'5" and ripped, has a great gimmick. It's good on the mic. Where don't you see potential at here, Triple H? You're crazy, right? So I don't think this push was worth the sacrifice of Chase U, which was the needed jolt of energy sometimes in an episode of NXT. That right, and you had potential superstars in Riley Osborne, in Thea Hale, in Duke Hudson, that could have been future players in WWE that I feel like are now not being used because you tried to push Ridge Holland again, which was absolutely crazy to me. Just absolutely crazy to me. But the last thing that I want to talk about is the title of this episode. The future of WWE will be female. Let me explain to you what I mean by that, right? If you look at the current roster on WWE, it's women's division, right? It's already pretty stacked, right? Rhea Ripley, Bianca Belair, Charlotte Flair, Becky Lynch, if she comes back, Liv Morgan, your mid cards like Lyra and Maxine and Chelsea and Piper, right? And you go down, Zelina, you go down that roster. And then you look at the NXT roster, and you got Sol Ruca, Roxanne Perez, Cora Jade, Jada Parker, Jakara Jackson, Last Legend, Stephanie Vaquer, Julia, Ren Sinclair, Thea Hale, and I'm sure I've missed some that could be big name players. Izzy Dame, JC Jane, Gigi Dolan, right? That NXT roster is stacked with talent on the female division. All right, but the top of the roster, Jordan Grace I missed, right? But the top of the roster are the future of the women's division: Jordan Grace, Stephanie Vaquer, Roxanne Perez, Julia, Jada Parker, right? Sol Ruca, right? I would say are the top 6 women in NXT right now, right? Roxanne, Sol, Jordan, Stephanie, Julia, Cora, maybe Zarya. I don't know how you would feel about Zarya being in there, but there's a lot of women coming up through NXT that'll be on the main roster here soon, right? But then you look at the more developmental talents that you have in LFG with Danny Ray, and I can't think of her name right now, but the one Asian girl that is very good, that are going to be players on NXT in the next few years. You look at Evolve, and you have Zeta Steel, which might be already NXT level caliber. You look at the idea of WWE ID, where anyone who wins the ID title gets a contract opportunity, right? It could be any independence or so you have the ability to sign some of these young talents on the indie scene, and bring them in. The future of WWE is female, because if we do the same thing I just did with the roster with the men's division, right? The top of the men's division right now are old dudes: Cody, Roman, Dwayne, John Cena, Jey Uso, right? You got the old veterans leading the charge right now. In the potential, you got Braun Breaker, Carmelo Hayes, Trick Williams, Obafemi, but you don't really have much more. I mean, in the tag division, you have Fraxium, but I'm talking about like the main card, right? The main event scene. You go to NXT. I already said Femi. Javon Evans could be added as a third. Ethan Page, but he's been in the business for a while. Ricky Starks is the future. You go down to like an LFG. Now I haven't watched LFG. I told you I don't really necessarily care about that show because they don't really give me a reason to care about it. The clips are fun and all, but there's no storyline that to me is cohesive enough to make me care about watching. So, but I don't think there's necessarily a single dude on there. I mean, Maxine's boyfriend's pretty good, but I don't know if I would call him the future of the business. I just said swipe right. So Brad Baylor, Ricky Smokes, I think Jackson Drake looks good. A part of that group. I failed to mention on the women's side as well. You have Zeta Steele, you have Callie Armstrong, you have Carly Bright's teammate. I can't think of her name right now. Crap. What is Carly Bright's teammate's name? Let's see. What's her name? Kendall Gray. There it is. So Kendall Gray, right? I think will be a something that grows on everybody. Zara Zacher potentially. I don't know if she's like main event scene, but there's a lot more potential women who could main event. The future of WWE will be through its women's division, and that is awesome. That means more opportunities for women, more Evolution events, right? I love the potential of Evolution to not just be main roster women, but to Evolve, and NXT women on the card, right? Imagine, getting like an opportunity to get an NXT contract for someone on Evolve by facing a top level NXT woman. And if you beat her, you get an NXT contract. Imagine that type of opportunity at an event like Evolution. I don't think they do that. I think Evolution, I hope if they, they're probably going to run the pay-per-view with it. And they'll probably just keep it main roster and run 5 matches because you do have enough stories to do that. And they'll leave the NXT developmental stuff out of it. But it would be cool if you had, a 10-match card for that show. But Triple H isn't going to go off of his template just because it's for the women, right? But, bro, I'm telling you, right? I'm telling you, the future of WWE will be their women's division. There's a lot more potential talent. Now, I don't think everyone I've named as potential superstars will make it to the main roster. I think a lot of them will end up getting cut. That's just the name of the business because there are so many of them and there's only so many opportunities, right? Because Rhea's not going anywhere. Rhea's only like 25, 26, maybe 27. She's somewhere around my age, right? Tiffany Stratton's early, mid-20s. Liv's still got some time. Excuse me. Roxanne's super young. So, I mean, the top of the women's roster, Bianca's in her, she just celebrated a birthday on Wednesday night. So happy birthday to the queen of WWE, the greatest of the best, the smartest, I don't know all of her fucking ESTs, and I'm not good with words. But Bianca Belair, the queen of WWE, just had a birthday. Happy birthday. It's late, right? I mean, but she's even, she's 36. So, I mean, she's even up there in age, going to be out of the way. here pretty soon, right? So it's crazy. Anyways, I just wanted to talk on that topic. The future of WWE is female. I thoroughly believe that. But that's all I have for you for this episode. If you have any comments, leave them in the comment section. If you're watching on YouTube, like, share, subscribe. If you're listening on audio, leave us a review and share. The most important thing y'all could do for us is share this podcast around. Let's build this community. Like, leave a comment, even if it's just a hey, that puts us in the algorithm. That's this episode. Don't get used to these episodes on Thursday because they're not going to happen as much. This is your weekly Junkyard Media Group type content, though, since James and Cody aren't having a show this week. But yeah, thank you all for listening and watching. Again, share the podcast with all of your wrestling friends. And until next time, which will be tomorrow, I'll see you back here, same time, same place. We got some rants to talk about here on the Slapping Me Wrestling Podcast. But until then, have a great rest of your night. And I will see you on the next episode of the Slapping Me Wrestling Podcast.
So hit that subscribe, come along for the ride. AEW, WWE, we're always on side. From fantasy booking to baddies that slay. Slapping Me Wrestling every Tuesday.